सप्तमेव चैतन्यानित्रम् उद्धसितं जागृतप्राप्यवरान्नि भोजतम्. Hey, good morning. It is 5:30 a.m. in the morning, and we are live here for you, with you, in this episode number 20. Today we are going to reach with you, preach with you, and teach with you the reaction of virtue and vibes on each other. In the previous episode, we have teached to you, we have taught to you the virtue and vibes in relation to the superior, in relation to the inferior, and in relation to the equals. How to make your relations with the superior, how to make your relation with the inferior, and how to make your relation with the equals, and then you can promote your good living as human being as per the virtue and values of the ancient Sanatana Dharma, the real human living principles. And in this today's episode, we are discussing, teaching, preaching, and reaching with you with the reactions of these virtue and values in relation to our each others mean the superior, inferior, and the equal. So be ready and get ready with the listening of these virtue and vices, how that impacted your life or human life in the ancient era, and how it has been dragged to a different ways today, that will be clear in this session today. So let's begin the reaction of virtues and vices on each others. We have now considered many virtues and vices separately, and have seen in many illustrations how virtues led to happiness and vices to misery. We have finally to see how a virtue helps to produce a virtue in another, and a vice, so that we may learn how to help others in rightness of thought and action, and thus promote their happiness by showing love to others. We awaken love to them by showing hate and awaken hate. We are apt to feel as others feel. A man who is angry makes those around him angry, and so quarrel arise and grow more and more bitter. An angry word brings an angry reply, and that brings a still more angry retort, and so on and on. On the other hand, gentle words bring gentle words in reply. Kindness arouses kindness, and good deeds cause good deed in others. When this is understood, we can use right emotions to counteract our wrong ones in others, instead of letting ourselves run into wrong emotions when these are shown to us. If a man speak angrily to us and we feel inclined to answer angrily, we should check ourselves and answer very gently, and this gentle answer will soothe him and make him feel less angry. This is what is meant by the returning good for evil. And only by acting in this way can we restore harmony when it is disturbed, and preserve it for the happiness of all. When Draupadi urged King Yudhishthira to attack the Kurus after he had been so cruelly cheated and ruined by them, the wise king pointed out to her that the returning of evil forever could only result in the continuance of misery. The wise man who tough precosted and precipitated suffered not his worth to be as aroused. Joyeth in the other world have passed his persecutor over this indifference. For this reason, it has been said that a wise man, whether strong or weak, should ever forgive his prosecutor, even when the latter is in tears. If amongst men there were not some equal to the earth in forgiveness, there would be no peace among men, but continued strife born of what? If the injured were to return their injuries, if one chastised by his superior were to chastise his superior in return, the consequence would be the destruction of every creature and sin would prevail. If the man who hate ill speeches from another returned those speeches, if the injured man returned his injuries, if the chastised person chastised in return, then would father slay sons and sons father, then would husbands slay wives and wives husbands, then, O Krishna, how could birth take place in a world thus filled with anger? For more, though that the birth of creature is due to peace. Hear how Dhritarashtra the king turned away by soft humility the anger of his wife Kaushalya, mother of Ramachandra, are rent by anguish for the loss of their unequaled son, exiled for long years from her fond arms. Spake for the first time angry words to Dashratha. Thou hast murdered thy sinless son with thine own hands, O king. Well, hadst thou trodden the ancient path maintained by the ancestor with so much toil, the husband is the first refuge of a woman, the son is the second, and the kinsman the third. There is no fourth. Though he has abandoned me, Rama is gone, I cannot leave thee here to go to him. In every way, thou hast destroyed me and destroyed the kingdom and the people. The king heard the harsh words and went lower under the greater burden of sorrow. His mind was all distraught and the lost consciousness. Recovering, he saw Kaushalya still beside him. In that moment, the memory of that past sin of his, of which this misery was the consequence, come back to him burning with the double sorrow of that sin and of the loss of Rama, trembling, folding hands and bending head, spoke to her. Forgive me, O Kaushalya, I fold my hands to thee, ever vast though tender hearted even unto others. Bear with their husband, whether he be good or ill. I am so broken already by my sorrow. Speak not harsh word to me, even in the anguish. She heard that piteous speech of the humble king, and tears of pity rushed forth from her eyes like new rainwater from the waterfalls. Her anger vanished, yielding place to deep humility and remorse and fear of sin for those harsh words. She seized the hands of the king and put them on her head and in great agitation said, forgive, O king, I entreat thee with my head upon the feet. It is for me to ask thee for forgiveness, not for thee to ask of me, for so great sin would come to me that woman is not honored of the wise in this or in the other world, who compel her husband to propitiate her. I know the dharma and I know that though my husband knoweth it and therefore must perform the promise and maintain the truth. Sorrow for my son drove me in a weak moment to say those words of wrong. Sorrow destroy all firmness. Sorrow destroy all wisdom. There is no enemy like to sorrow. It swells within my heart like rivers in the rains. When I think of my beloved son, thus was Kausalya's bitterness outcome by Dhritarashtra, sweet humility and patience. If he had answered bitterly to her bitter words, the quarrel would have grown and their common grip would have driven them from each other. But he met her pride with humility, her reproach and reproach with meekness, her anger with the tenderness, and thus humility, meekness, and tenderness were aroused in her. So again, does Ramachandra awaken trust towards Bharata in Lakshmana's angry breast by showing out that trust himself, Rama goes forth from Ayodhya with his wife and brother to keep his father's word unbroken, dwelling in the forest, heard the distant murmurs of a marching army, and bade Lakshmana ascend a tree and look. Lakshmana saw that it was Bharata coming into the forest with a great throng of men. Anger at the exile forced his thought at once into the way of suspicion against Bharata, and he came in haste to Rama and asked him worthfully to prepare for battle as Bharata was coming to slay them and so make sure of his sovereignty. But Rama's mind was full of love to Bharata and not anger, and tenderly he said, mistrust him not, I will say to him, give all this kingdom unto Lakshmana, and he will say but one word, yes, the wrath of Lakshmana vanished, giving place to shame. And Bharata came and begged and prayed of Rama that he should go back to Ayodhya. But Rama would not break his father's word in letter or spirit, and Bharata carried away the walking sandals of Rama and placed them on the throne as symbol of the rightful sovereign and ruled Ayodhya in his name and his regent. For the 14 years of Rama's wanderings in the exile, over and over again in the dark days of their exile, did his wife and brother, losing their heart and patience, blame Yudhishthira for his loyal adherence to his compact with the Kauravas and his patient endurance of wrong over and over again did that noble heart pierced and tortured by the reproaches of his loved ones win them back by gentleness to the path of truth and honor. Thus, Bhima giving away to fierce, angry, bitterly, and upbraided his elder brother with the tried merit of sticking to a promise made to gambler who had overreached him, laid the loss of kingdom and riches at his door. Reproached him with weakness, with deserting the virtues of his order, with making himself ridiculous, with Yudhishthira's summoning all his patience and remaining silent for a few moments. Answer gently that doubtless of Bhima's words were true. I cannot reproach thee for torturing me, but thus piercing me with they airy words, for from my own folly alone has this calamity fallen upon you all. I should have controlled my mind and not have allowed it to be influenced by arrogance, vanity, and pride. I cannot then reproach thee, O Bhima, for the winged world, yet have I given my pledge, and who may break his pledged word? Death is easier to bear the gaining of a realm by a lie, but a veil than to speak to me thus harshly. My heart is broken by the sight of the suffering I have caused, but I may not break my word. Wait, O my brother, for the return of better days. Oh, as the shall wait for the harvest, for no, oh Bhima, that my promise may not be made untrue. Virtue is better than life itself, or than the joys of heaven, kingdom, sons, fans, wealth. All these do not come up to 1/16th part of truth. Thus patiently did the prince bear his brother's angry taunt, and ever was the ready to meet harsh blame with gentle humility, and to win by love a yielding that his proud brother would never have given to wrath. As gentle symptom arouse love, so does thoughtless ridicule arouse hatred, and hatred in its turn give rise to many evils. The fame of Yudhishthira spread far and wide, and all men praised the splendor of his Rajasya sacrifices. Now this praise bestowed on his hated rivals filled with the jealous and heart of Duryodhana, and this evil emotions was rendered bitter and more active by the careless disregard of his feelings shown by Bhima and by brother and others. For one day as Yudhishthira was sitting on his golden throne, surrounded by his brothers, by many countries, and King Duryodhana and his brothers entered the assembly hall. And as he came, he was deceived by the art of Maya the Dhanava, who had built Yudhishthira's place with skill and craft, and taking the crystal lake as water, he drew up his garment to avoid wetting them, and later fell into the water with looked like solid ground. Then Bhima laughed out boisterously and rudely, and others followed his bad example, although Yudhishthira reproved their lack of courtesy, and Duryodhana with black frown went away, ashamed with rage in his heart, and returned to Hastinapura, vowing vengeance for the insult. And this was one of many causes that led at last to the gambling match and the exile, and the fierce battle of Kurukshetra, and the slaughter of Duryodhana of his and Yudhishthir kinsmen. Evil returned with evil does what? Give birth to new evils, thus lengthening the claim of chain of misery. Bhiru, Bhrigu had a son, Jamadagini, who became famous for his great austerities and rigid life, and in his family he born Rama, called later Rama of the X. Now Rama, though a Brahmana by birth, was at heart as a Kshatriya, and his character was as his grandfather Bhrigu had professed, fit for the military order. And in Jamadagini also lurked hidden a seed of that fierce temper which all his austerities had not availed to wholly burn away. And this caused sore trial and misery to befall this great race for Jamadagini. Furious at heart because of a hasty doubt of his wife's chastity, bade his sons and one by one to slay her, but none would lift hand against the mother's sacred person save Rama, the youngest, who smote off her head with the axe with an axe. Being granted a boon by his father, he asked that his mother might be restored into life and then went on pilgrim to expiate the crime of matricide. But not thus could the evil wrapped by Jamadagini anger to exhaust it while her sons were absent. Renuka, the wife of Jamadagini, left alone, had to offer hospitality to Arjuna, son of Kritavrya, Kritavirya, and the intoxicated with a warrior's pride, not deeming her reception worthy of his greatness, carried away forcibly the calf of the cow whose milk supplied the butter for the daily sacrifices. When Rama returned, Jamadagni told him what had happened and the plaintive loan of the cow for her young one increased the anger aroused by the recital, and so, losing self-control in passion, he rushed off and slew Arjuna, cutting off his thousand arm after fierce fight. This act aroused in return fierce wrath of the kinsmen of Arjuna, and to return evil with evil, they rushed to the hermitage of Jagadini, Jamadagini, where he sat engaged in meditation and slew him with arrows, defenseless, as he was sitting immersed in contemplation. Nor yet was the tale of slaughter completed, since forgiveness, the only thing that could cut the chain of evil, was not in the heart of Rama's of the acts. And he, having bewailed his father and having burned his body with the due rites, vowed by the funeral prayed the slaughter of the Kshatriyas caste. For thus the evil grew ever swelling to larger and larger proposition. Then taking up his axes, he attacked and slew the kinsmen of Arjuna, and after that word with all Kshatriyas exterminating well nigh with that warrior caste. Even when we are treated with injustice and unkindness, it is best to preserve sweetness and agreeableness of behavior, and thus with the one who so treats us be the superior, equal, and inferior to show sweetness and agreeableness in return. Once